In the vast, silent deserts of Jordan, especially near the breathtaking expanse of Wadi Rum, there's a profound quiet. But this silence isn't empty. The local Bedouin people, who have navigated these sands for centuries, believe the desert is alive. They say it listens, and sometimes it answers back. There's an ancient warning, a piece of wisdom passed down through generations of Bedouin families, whispered around campfires under a blanket of stars. It's a simple yet chilling instruction. Never, ever answer a voice you hear in the desert at night. They say the desert has a caller, a mysterious presence, an entity that learns your voice not by hearing you speak, but by listening to the silent echoes of your thoughts. It's a chilling idea, isn't it? That something out there in the emptiness can know you so intimately without ever meeting you. The story I'm about to tell you revolves around a man named Samir. Years ago, Samir was a seasoned guide, one of the best in the region. He knew the desert like the back of his hand. He could navigate by the stars alone, read the shifting sands like a book, and find water where others would see only rock and dust. He was a man of logic, of practical knowledge. He had heard the old stories, the warnings about the desert caller, but he always dismissed them with a laugh. To him, they were just folk tales, ghost stories told to scare children and entertain tourists. He believed the desert was harsh, but it was just sand and stone. He was wrong. One cool evening, Samir was leading a small group of tourists deep into Wadi Rum. They had set up camp for the night, nestled among the towering, wind-sculpted rock formations that looked like Martian landscapes. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the sandstone cliffs. The tourists were tired, settling into their tents for the night, their quiet murmurs fading into the immense silence of the desert. Samir was taking a final look around, ensuring everything was secure. He was leaning against a large, cool rock, enjoying the peace, when he heard it. "Samir?" The voice was faint, carried on the breeze from somewhere far away. It was soft, almost a whisper, yet it held a distinct note of concern. It sounded like someone was lost or in need of help. Samir's first thought was that one of the tourists had wandered off from the camp. It was a foolish thing to do at night, but it happened. With a sigh, he straightened up, cupped his hands around his mouth, and called back into the darkness. "Hello? Is someone there?" The moment the words left his lips, an unnatural stillness fell over the desert. The gentle night breeze died down. The chirping of the desert insects stopped. It was as if the entire landscape was holding its breath. A knot of unease began to form in Samir's stomach. He stood there, listening, for what felt like an eternity. Then the voice came again. This time it was undeniably closer. "Samir, come here." A shiver traced its way down his spine. The voice was clear, but there was something off about it. It was too perfect, too steady. His hand instinctively went to the two-way radio clipped to his belt. He pressed the button. "This is Samir. Is everyone in their tents?" "Please respond." One by one, sleepy voices crackled back over the radio. Everyone was accounted for. They were all safe in the camp. His heart began to pound against his ribs. It couldn't be one of the tourists. So who, or what's calling his name? The voice called out a third time, and this time, the blood in his veins ran cold. Samir. The tone, the gentle inflection, the specific way it pronounced his name. It was identical to how his mother used to call him when he was a child. A voice he hadn't heard in over a decade. Every instinct, every fiber of his being screamed at him to stay put, to ignore it, to run back to the safety of the campfire. The old warnings, the stories he had laughed at, now flooded his mind. Never answer a voice in the desert at night. But he had already answered. And the sound of his mother's voice. It was an irresistible pull. It tugged at a deep-seated part of his soul, bypassing all logic and reason. He had to know. Against his better judgment, he started walking, leaving the comforting glow of the camp behind him, and venturing out into the deep, inky blackness. He moved towards the direction of the voice, his footsteps muffled by the soft sand. As he walked, he noticed a strange chill in the air. The desert night was always cool, but this was a different kind of cold. It was a deep, penetrating cold that seemed to seep into his bones. He looked up at the sky, and for a moment he felt a wave of vertigo. The stars, the familiar constellations he had used to navigate his entire life, seemed wrong. They were slightly out of place, as if the sky itself had been subtly rearranged. He kept walking, drawn forward by that phantom voice. But then it stopped. The calling ceased, and the profound, unnerving silence returned. Samir stood alone in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by an impenetrable darkness. The warmth of his mother's voice was gone, replaced by a terrifying sense of isolation. That's when he realized something that made his skin crawl. He could hear footsteps in the sand nearby, but they weren't his. They were heavy, slow, deliberate. Crunch, crunch, crunch a few paces behind him. He froze, every muscle tensed. He was too afraid to turn around. He held his breath, listening. The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was heavier, more menacing than any sound could ever be. He knew, with a certainty that defied all logic, that something was standing right behind him. He could feel its presence, a tall, dark shape in his mind's eye, waiting, watching. Finally, summoning every last ounce of courage he possessed, Samir spun around. There was nothing there, just the empty desert stretching out into the night. But his eyes fell upon the sand at his feet, and a gasp of pure terror escaped his lips. The sand was disturbed. There were two long, deep impressions right behind where he had been standing, as if something incredibly tall and heavy had been there just a second ago, looming over him. And leading away from those impressions was a single set of tracks, and they weren't human. He didn't scream, he didn't even think. Primal fear took over, and he ran. He ran blindly, with no sense of direction, his lungs burning, his heart threatening to explode in his chest. He just ran away from that spot, away from that feeling of being watched, away from the silence that was now filled with unimaginable dread. He ran until the first pale light of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gray and pink. Only then did he dare to stop, collapsing onto the sand, exhausted and trembling. Samir survived that night. He eventually found his way back to his stunned and confused tour group. He offered no explanation for his disappearance, and he never spoke of what happened out there in the dark. But the experience shattered him. He, the man who loved the desert more than anything, could no longer bear its silence. He never worked as a guide again. He left Wadi Rum and never looked back. Now, when the wind howls through the canyons of Wadi Rum, when it moves in a strange, whispering way, the locals say it's not just the wind. They say it's the caller, restless, still searching. Searching for a new voice to learn, a new person to lure into the darkness. So if you ever find yourself in that beautiful, terrifying landscape, and you hear your name whispered on the wind, remember Samir's story. Remember the old warning. Stay by the fire. Keep your voice to yourself. Do not answer. Because the desert already knows your name. And it already knows where you are. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the world's most mysterious places. Stay safe out there.